It's 5?
You're live.
Okay, just making sure it's 5 o'clock.
Somewhere.
Okay. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Start with allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Khrushchev?
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Here.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon?
Here.
Chair Fahana?
Here. We'll go ahead with the announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand of the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to on the city website and clicking Meeting Agendas link. Public comment. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out the name and address slips and give them to the Planning Commission Secretary. In this case, it will be Diane. If you can just hand those to her. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, which is state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on this printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. We'll start with Mr. Mendoza.
I have none.
Mr. Dixon.
I have none as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker. The only place of our consent calendar, we just have approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 1st. Everybody have a chance to read them over? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion we approve the minutes for February 1st as read.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Khrushchev?
Aye.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Walker?
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon?
Aye.
Chair Fahana?
Aye.
5-0 approved.
Thanks. Items removed from the consent calendar for discussion. We do not have any. We do not have any public hearing at this time. Okay, so discussion and potential action items, we have none, and Community Development Director updates.
Madam Chair, if we could just defer that to the end.
Okay, so we'll circle back around for that. So if you're just staying for a study session, after that we'll be going over the Community Development Director updates. So let's get to it, our study session. Suggestions and changes to the Vacation Home Rental Ordinance from the Ad Hoc Committee. We'll turn it over to Mr. Travis Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And present what I have here in front of me is a summary of the meetings. We have obviously 2 members that were part of the Ad Hoc Committee, and they can help fill in the blanks. City Council established the Ad Hoc Committee to review the existing VHR code, Section 19.41, Vacation Home Rentals, and make recommendations for changes. It was a 7-member committee with 2 council members, 2 planning commissioners, and 3 members from the community. The committee met 9 times over 5 months, so there was a lot of discussion there amongst the committee. They have sent us their suggested changes to the code. These changes are broken down into 2 types. One is changes to the code recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee through the majority vote. I've marked the additions to the code in red and deletions in strike through. And then they also sent some unresolved items to the Planning Commission for further discussion and consideration. Staff has made some comments in italics, and I'll point those out as we go through the slides. The code, as you all know, is an ordinance, and so it thus must be amended by ordinance. So that does require public hearing. If Once the Planning Commission approves, it goes to the City Council for another public hearing. That's the first reading, then there's a second reading, and then it's 30 days before it becomes effective. That's how ordinances work. The city attorney will review the final ordinance, so once you've all made your decisions, staff will review, amend the ordinance with the track changes mode, and send it to the city attorney for review. It is our goal tonight to complete our review and provide enough direction to staff so that they can write the ordinance and get it ready for the city attorney to review and then the public hearing. So I'll go through these one by one. Won't read every word, but just kind of give the gist of it. The first change is under permit issuance, and basically they are proposing to replace an entire paragraph concerning off-street parking. So it gave a lot of detail as far as number of spaces for bedrooms and all of that, and essentially really just simplifying it to a new paragraph. The maximum number of vehicles parking overnight allowed at the vacation home rental shall be limited to one vehicle per one bedroom rental, but in no case shall the number of vehicles exceed the number available on-site parking spaces. So this language is actually repeated again in operation standards, so it's kind of a consistency change. Also under permit issuance, strike item G entirely. Minimum stay of 2 consecutive nights shall be required. Just aside from staff, this will require obviously renumbering in the section, so the alphabet's going to change a bit as we go through this. Yes, sir.
Can I add a little
Sure.
why we did that?
Yep.
Okay, when we were going through the discussion, there were two wings. One is a lot of people felt like, well, I want to be able to have it one night, have a home rental for one night. They wanted that option. The other one was, in most cases, people do a 2-night minimum anyway. If you look at most rentals, they do a 2-night minimum away. And the third reason is because there was no way for the city to enforce that. So why were we going to have something in a regulation that we were not able to enforce? We wouldn't know if it was a 2-night minimum because it's handled outside the city. The renting of the vacation home rental is handled by a third party, not by us. So we would never know if there was a 2-night minimum or not. That's all I've got.
Okay. Ad hoc committee also proposed a new item O. The city shall respond to operating VHRs without a permit by issuing the owner a warning for the first violation, followed by a $2,500 fine for the second violation, and then a $5,000 fine for a third violation, followed by a $5,000 fine per day if not abated. So this is a little bit different and higher penalty than what we have for the rest of the violations that are in the code. So this is kind of a different carve-out, operating without a permit. Staff's only comment here is that this should be moved to the non-compliance violation sections rather than under permit issuance. Also under permit issuance, a new item, which will likely be numbered P, vacation home rental shall not exceed the maximum number of VHRs permitted within the city of 29 Palms Commission. In the document that I got from Matthew Alexander, it actually, I think, is saying the same thing as the paragraph below, which provides more detail, in that the total number of vacation home rentals within the community will be limited to a number which shall not exceed a percentage of all single-family homes within the city of 29 Palms. The total number of vacation home rentals permitted within the city of 29 Palms will result from the Planning Commission determining the maximum percentage of VHRs permissible as a percentage of all single-family homes within the city. So this is the first one that the committee sent to you all without a recommendation. I think the committee did vote to establish a cap, the majority, but they did not set a percentage. Staff would suggests that we add to this language the clause detached homes, detached single-family homes. There is a distinction between an attached single-family home and a detached single-family home. You'll recall in our housing element, we had, which is a census category, attached single-family homes. So those are things like townhouses, some duplexes, and things like that. Since the VHR code does not allow shared walls, we would recommend just that specification that it be detached single-family homes. And would also specify, if we go to this route, that it be the latest census data. So each year, we get an update from the census. Obviously, we just went through the 2020 census, but the American Community Survey produces an update each year of the homes. And since there are a variety of sources for that data, that would be essentially the one we would go to.
But again, can I enter something? I think there was a confusion here because it looks like you're saying the same thing in two paragraphs.
Right.
You're going to set a limit. And during was first, do we limit the number of permits per entity? And that was voted on, and then it came down to where, okay, then the committee was considering limiting the number of a cap on the number of vacation home rentals within the community. And of course, when that came up, it was saying, okay, you have this thing that has economic value, which was a vacation home rental permit that has an economic value. And if you're going to set the cap, then they went back and re-looked at, then we should set a limit on how many that you can have per person.
That's a little further down.
Is it further down?
Yeah.
Because I read through it and I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So placing a cap on VHRs as a percentage of detached single-family homes. The census numbers, and I came up with 5,797 single-family detached houses. I took the total and I did subtract the their own base. I know it's small, getting picky, but those 36 obviously could not be rented as vacation home rentals. So then it's a matter of just doing kind of the math here. Right now, current, as of this morning anyway, we had 226 permits issued. We had 129 pending. That's a total of 355, and 45 are closed. We do have permits that are closed for a variety of reasons. Most of the time they sell the home, and vacation home rental permits are not transferable, so the new owner, if they want to operate, have to reapply again. Sometimes they just decide not to continue to run the VHR. So there's a variety of reasons. Others just move from the area. So this is the math, numbers rounded down. So you can see that right now we're just a little over 6%. 6% is 350 houses. 7% is 405 houses. 8% is 463 houses. 9% is 521, and 10% would be 579.
Travis, I have a question. You
Sure.
talked about if the property is sold, that permit comes back to the city. How do we know if that property is sold and that placard comes back versus them just buying the house and continuing with that placard there?
It's probably a good question. I know one of the things we do is part of our software that investigate this goes out and checks against the owners and the houses that are being listed on Airbnb and VRBO and other sites like that.
Okay.
But we always say to every VHR owner that they're non-transferable, and if somebody is operating without the required permit, they do get cited.
Okay.
So this is the second part, Mr. Krushat, that you were saying. So if a cap is imposed, the committee then recommends that a limit be placed on the number of VHRs a person or entity can license. And I think the theory there is if there's a cap, you don't want, say, one or two or a handful of people owning a large number of VHRs, thereby,
Yeah, if they want that, they should go build a motel.
Right. So we ran this data. This is at the end of January. It's a bit dated, but hasn't really changed that much. We looked at how many vacation home rental owners or licenses. Owners had multiple licenses, and here's the stats, the way they break down. We had 2 that had 4 VHRs within the city. We had 3 that had 3 VHRs within the city. And the rest of that number are 2 with 2 VHRs, okay? Of those 2 with 2 VHRs, 9 of them have ADUs on the same parcel. So we do permit, an ADU to be licensed. Now, unlike, say, Yucca Valley, which permits the whole property dwelling unit. So if you have 2, you have to apply for 2 permits. 9 vacation home rentals are owned by LLCs. So we do get the articles of incorporation for the LLC to determine the owner. And 3 are owned by corporations, according to our records. Okay, moving on, permit issuance. This is a new item, R. A vacation home rental unit that is inactive for 12 months or longer shall be withdrawn from the city's list of permitted VHRs and not counted towards the cap. I think there was some concern that somebody could set up a VHR within a neighborhood and essentially prohibit others from doing the same in the same neighborhood. But at any rate, staff's comment here is define inactive. I think the other reason is somebody could basically be holding a VHR permit, not really using it as well. So our question is define inactive. What does that mean? Because we have to administer this objectively, and so does inactive mean if you have just 1 day of rental within a year, calendar year, you're considered active. How will this be policed? And our thought is it would be through submission of the TOT, Transit Occupancy Tax Filing Form, which VHR owners are required to submit. Next, under operating standards, this was really an addition to structural design features, sentence added to the very end. Each permitted VHR shall include a noise mitigation plan, which shall be kept on file with the city of 29 Palms. So there again, devil's in the detail, define what a noise mitigation plan is. Are there required components of the plan? So that when somebody has filed it, we know that it's adequate. So I've heard things that it could be, that specifically addresses noise and noise concerns. Could be a monitor, could be other things, but we need to define what that standard is. Another operating standard, this is just really kind of a word change here, where they have tenants, change tenants to guests. With that, in other places within the ordinance, we do have tenants, so suggestion here is just change it, make it consistent. Another small change, maximum number of vehicles parking overnight. The words parking overnight allowed at the vacation home rental shall be limited to 1 vehicle per 1 bedroom unit in the rental. I think there, it's just some clarification that if you have a vacation home rental, you can say have a birthday party for your child during the day, and there might be 10 vehicles there, but if the 10 vehicles are there overnight, then that's a violation, and trying to make that distinction between having some sort of event during the day versus overcrowding at night. Committee recommends striking the whole paragraph on animals, and maybe Max, you could provide some insight into that. Max.
No, I think it was kind of redundant. It talks about that in the later section. Is why we struck that one out.
Okay.
I was not the driving force of that one.
Okay.
Was committee?
All right. Under operating standards, property maintenance, Prior to receiving a permit allowing a short-term vacation home rental, each owner and/or agent shall provide evidence that they have completed certified classes, either live or virtual, with instructions on how to be a responsible vacation home rental host. So this was something that a lot of cities do. You have to go through a class, kind of reinforce and explain what the rules are. And so we would do the same here. It could be city staff, but we could contract it out. Right now, city staff is pretty slim. Also, under operating standards, strike subsection H, miscellaneous condition. This has to do with signage. Max or Jim, do you want to provide some more detail on this one?
I don't remember why we struck that out, to be perfectly honest. I do not remember.
Okay.
No, what they were doing is this, yeah, you have a placard, but they don't want you to have a big billboard outside your front yard saying this is the greatest. You can't have signage like that, and we have a signage in the ordinance anyway.
Right, that's correct.
So we have signage, and the same way with the animals. We have an existing city ordinance concerning animals.
Right.
So I think what we were looking for is, let's not repeat, let's just reference what we have and already have in the city ordinances. And I think this was like, no, you can't sit there and throw your billboard sign out in your front yard saying it's a VHR and a neon sign.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's not removed completely?
Because,
It's just repeated, deleting the.
yeah, because we
okay.
have the rules within the sign ordinance.
Right.
Okay, non-compliance, the penalties for violations specified in subsection 1941 ADA shall be the responsibility of the owner, and they inserted the word per event. Each event may include more than one violation, but shall only count as one step toward a revocation as follows. And then essentially for the violations, the fine was doubled, and the word range was excluded, so it goes to a straight fine. For first violation within a 12-month period, it's $500 instead of $250. Second violation is $1,000 instead of $500. And the third violation is $2,000 instead of $1,000.
But at one incident, they could rack up multiple violations in one night, correct?
Right, so an event is a day.
Yeah.
So if you get called on Friday night, you have a noise violation, a trash violation, a parking violation, you've now just racked up
$3 grand or $2 grand.
three fines, right? But that's one event towards revocation. So you couldn't get just have one bad tenant, one bad night, and have your license revoked from you.
No. But there would still be a fine of the 3 violations.
Yes.
So would it be $500 per violation, or would it be a third violation at $2,000?
It would be $500 per violation.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you 2 weeks later have another bad tenant and have another bad night, and you get all 3 of those fines again, then they're all 3 $1,000.
Okay, got it.
I think we need to clarify that in the language here because
I think so too.
it's not clear.
Procedural question. On previous, on 41.070, where we moved to strike,
Right.
it strikes except as set forth in section 1941.065. That's the section that requires the vacational rental sign. So if we strike that here, does that invalidate?
No.
So I had a similar concern, Mr. Mendoza, because if I was confused as well. Like, I thought we required that you had to put this signage out, and then here you're trying to say strike out signage, so I was confused. But they're trying to say advertisement signs, like a
Right.
huge 5x7 banner that says, I'm a Airbnb, come rent me. So not regarding that signage, but yes, the placard signage of being a VHR is going to still be required.
Yeah, sure.
So perhaps the question that I jotted down to help anybody with the same confusion that we had, we could strike that, but maybe add a reference to our current sign code, so that if I'm like reading this, I'm like, oh, there's a sign code for advertisement. Let me jump to that one. So you still have the required signage for, I'm a VHR, wanted to hang a sign, oh, there's an actual code in the city that says this, so you could reference that.
So have something on there that says the only signage allowed is
Correct.
one issued by the city, which shows.
Stating I'm a
you have
VHR.
permit and that there's a number involved.
Yes. And that could all be under one signage, not like signage here and then later a couple pages I have signage F referring to that. It could just be like, though, that's combined.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then it goes on to define violations. Not quite sure what the intent here is, but they're broken down to procedural violations. So this is a violation of the city's rules, really dealing with the process, such as signage placement, renting without having the license, advertising without having a license, that sort of thing is procedural. And then you go into disturbance violations. These would be things like unattended trash or trash cans, verified noise violations, disorderly behavior, amplified music, loud parties, etc. And then safety violations, that would be overcrowding, things like overcrowding, parking in a manner that constricts the roadways, untended fires, fireworks, or other activity could potentially negatively impact the safety of the community. And then disturbance and safety violations are punitive, include operating without a permit. These violations count towards 3 strikes and you're out, or counseling towards a permit in the event of a 3rd violation. So you go through the text to define these violations, but as I understand it, there's no distinction here in how the penalties are applied, unless I've got something incorrect here.
Mr. Clark, if I may, I know we had Mr. Walker as part of the committee. The context of this, and really didn't define it real well, but obviously kind of passing it to the planning commission, was the disturbance was what we really wanted to hit people for, right? So if you're disturbing our community, we wanted to have a more punitive approach to it. And I think the context of the conversation was in that week, if you recall, somebody left the trash can out, right? And do we want to hit them with a $500 penalty and leave their trash can out? And that was part of the context of the conversation is, so should we bifurcate those, other related infractions, that those are normal infractions, but really hit them with disturbance related at a more punitive level? And the trash can was the example of it. You really want to hit them for $500 penalty for leaving their trash cans out, when, in the reality, if you go through the community, so that was the context of it, so I just wanted to kind of talk about it.
So regardless, if something's being defined, it should go in the definition sections, and not just stick definitions throughout the ordinance. Every ordinance generally has a definition section that you can refer to.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, sir.
do you not see in here where it defines when a violation occurs? We have a section that requires an agent or owner to respond within 1 hour. If whatever the disturbance complaint was is handled in that timely manner, is that still going to be a violation subject to fine?
That would be up to that would be up to you all, but I don't think that was the intent.
That was not the intent.
But it doesn't say that. There's no definition of when the violation occurs.
Agreed. But no, that was not, that was exactly the intent, was like, okay, you have a small, low-grade violation, for lack of a better word, and the individual takes care of it, either the guest or the owner takes care of it, then he's not going to get violated, or he's not going to be cited for a violation. Trash cans being one.
That would be a
If
clear.
you want to make that clear, you can do that.
Yep. Good point. Noncompliance in subsection C, and this one I'm a little confused about. in lieu of revocation or fines as set forth above, the community development director at his or her sole discretion, based upon the severity of the violations, can revoke the permit, but then it says at an advertised revocation hearing in conformance with another section, revocation modification, may suspend, sorry, not revoke, but may suspend vacation home rental for a period of 12 months. So right now the system is, I have the ability to revoke the permit. The applicant, and then it would come before the planning commission. What this is saying is, it sounds like the revocation could only occur, or the suspension can only occur after a revocation hearing is set. So it's a little conflicting there. I would.
Was that thought maybe just that they want both options, it's just not worded correctly in how they presented that? Like, they do want you to have the option that you could suspend, but they also want you to have, like, the person know that they can have the hearing for the appeal. So maybe that language just was like, we want everything.
I was under the impression we were trying to give the community development director the ability to, if it was a severe violation, to have the ability to do a revocation, a suspension,
But if he's doing that, he would not need a hearing.
no, he wouldn't need a hearing.
Right, that was the intent, was to give Travis the ability to, if the violation was egregious enough, to revoke the license or suspend it for 6 months, 12 months, without having to have a hearing. The vacation home rental owner can still appeal that decision,
Once you
but
make it.
there wouldn't have to be a hearing take place first to revoke the license or suspend it for that period of time.
Okay.
So it looks like it needs to be two sentences.
So you can have the sole discretion if it's egregious enough or violates whatever, and that they could be suspended to pursue.
Yes.
Okay. While they pursue the hearing for appeal. Yeah.
Is the appeal have a cost to it?
It does. For vacation home rentals, it is the $305.
I have a problem with giving the power of revocation without a hearing, suspension, fine. But I think if it's egregious enough that it needs to go to revocation, a suspension can be made and then have the revocation hearing. I think the revocation should be made by the planning commission.
Did we already change, or that was still part of the talks that we would give you, that was decided?
I think Commissioner Mendoza is making a clarification that it wouldn't be an outright revocation or the power to revoke. It would be the ability to suspend, giving the applicant a chance to appeal, and that would come before planning commission. Okay, almost at the end here. Other changes that the home would undergo periodic safety inspection. And 3 years was a number that was thrown out. So as you all are probably aware, when a house is first licensed or permitted, it goes through a complete safety inspection. Also has its septic certification done. I think there was a concern that things could change over 3 years. Sometimes people add bedrooms and don't tell anybody, especially the assessors or the city. But that every 3 years we would perform the safety inspection, just make sure everything's being complied with respect to, fire alarms and extinguishers, your evacuation route, all of that sort of stuff. So that's, I think, what the intent is behind this.
And that's before they would get their placard back or approval for the
Yeah,
continuous
before
year.
the renewal on the third year. So I think we can change our system to set this up without too much difficulty in administering. Just have to talk with the folks that run Citizen Serve, our management system, but I think they can put that flag in there. And then I think
Is that
this,
a full reinspection, everything, septic system, everything that you do
I would just argue safety inspection.
Okay.
But also making sure, things like they've got to, and we do this, as part of the inspection. Signs still placed, parking still available, all of that sort of stuff. And then this was one that was thrown out at the end, define residential character of the neighborhood. Really subjective. Do we want to even attempt that, or do we strike that from the ordinance? Because I think that's kind of what got us here in the first place, is wrestling with that, trying to create an objective standard for that. And then other issues, just kind of consistency in wording, and as you've heard me go over these, you've heard the word permit versus license. We're trying to be consistent in how we define these things. So a vacation home rental is really a license. It's like kind of like a driver's license. You get a license and then you renew it periodically. Whereas a permit is something that's issued all the time, like a building permit. A street vendor, that's really kind of like a license. They have a license, a yearly license, but they can renew it. So I would suggest that we go through this chapter now and just make sure we're consistent in calling it license instead of permit. But another word, permit, is in everyone's everyone's head at this point. And that was it. So what I would suggest is we have members of the public an opportunity to comment, and then we do have some written comments, and then we circle back through these and get a poll from the Planning Commission about which direction we'd like to go, so that we can begin writing that formal ordinance changes.
Okay, thank you. That was a great presentation, reviewing everything. Do we have any, did you receive any slips to speak? Do we have anybody in the public who would like to make a statement? Yeah, you can come to the podium. Just make sure that you fill out the name and address slip and hand that to Diane before you leave. Okay. And just as a yes, and as a reminder, everyone gets 3 minutes. Okay. You don't have to. You get a full 3.
Yeah, there's a mic. If you could, so the folks
Yeah, if you might have to. Yeah.
might need to turn it on.
Hello, hello.
All right, there we go.
I can hear you great.
Nice reverb. I'm pleased to see that you're considering caps, percentage of single family dwellings. I don't know the terminology exactly. But I also think another issue that needs to be considered is the issue of density. It's not just that X number percent of homes in 29 Palms, the city, should be identified as a cap, but also some of the neighborhoods have a density of these vacation rentals than other neighborhoods. For instance, the little pod in which I live is 8 structures, and 4 of those are either or soon to be vacation rental homes. So that's 50% of the buildings in my area, which seems, and it'd be nice if that were considered as part of this determination of caps, or as part of the definition of this vague, quality of the neighborhood. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have anybody else from the public who'd like to speak? Hi, please use the microphone for the guests watching virtually.
You gotta turn it on. I think you turned it off.
And if you could just
Now?
state your name.
There we go. Hi, I'm Susan Peplow. Thank you for your time this evening. Just a couple of things. I was on much of the study previously, so I'm aware of most of the recommendations that are being made to your committee. A couple things that still are a little concerning for me is fines relating to, and I understand how they're kind of broken down, a little concerned about nuisance fines. The trash can's is a perfect example. Not necessarily because I'm a fan of trash cans left on the street, but more so I think that it might be ripe for abuse for people who are, potentially against vacation rentals. they're just seeking you out to be, making complaints with pretty heavy fines. I mean, sometimes trash doesn't pick up till 6:30 at night. So that's just one of my concerns, is that there's some pretty high penalties for nuisance reports that may be even fraudulent on some level. Kind of goes around to the ad hoc committee also. One of the things that we talked about was like certainly off-street parking, no off-street parking, or no on-street parking in the evenings. That makes perfect sense. But if limiting per bedroom could be problematic, like what if you had one bedroom and your mom and your sister are meeting from 2 different locations? So technically that would make it so you can't have 2 cars meet at and stay, even though it's in a garage, on a driveway, off-street overnight. Then in item P, talking about the percentage of, I shouldn't say the percentage, limiting perhaps how many permits individuals can have. I didn't actually look through the list, but I appreciate that Travis had broken it down. You can see that it's not corporations that are coming in and, taking over 29 Palms with vacation rentals. Really what it is, it's people like Rent 29 Palms. He worked within the city to put, all those properties that are on National Park Drive. I'd be proud if I were him and saying that you can only put, a max of like 2 after he worked with the city with detached garages and such to allow him that opportunity. And I'm just giving that as an example. And then, again, it's a percentage of people that have multiple properties, and myself is probably in that list. And I'm a longstanding community member and have been for a while, and I think that that's what we really see, are people that live here. We're not just outsiders. And that might be it. Parking, the nuisance, and a little concerned about limiting how many vacation rentals individuals can own when they're within the community and hands-on. So I think that's it. You guys are doing a great job. I really appreciate your time.
I have a question for her.
Okay.
I know you own several VHRs. Are they all currently used as VHRs, or are there some of them that are rented?
Absolutely not. They're not actually moved. And that's, these two have heard me say this about 1,000 times, but.
Thank you. You guys could follow up after.
Okay.
Well, good answer.
The answer is no. The permit, I have permits.
3 minutes.
But she's responding to a question I asked.
Okay.
Yep. That's a lot.
I have permits. They're not necessarily used for exclusive use as a vacation rental. So I have the ability to rent within less than 30 days, but they're actually long-term rentals, generally speaking. So I have the flexibility to do either or, which is one of my main concerns for limiting how many you can have. I'm in compliance to be able to rent to somebody for 28 days that needs to wait on base housing, but I'm going to say only 2 permits? That would be problematic for my business and the community and the Marines. But thank you, for Mr. Mendoza, for the question.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Any other comments from public? Okay, so we'll bring it here and we'll further discuss. Okay, so you just need a little bit more like.
Yeah, at this point, just kind of the direction from council. It could be, voice vote, show of hands, just to make sure we're in the right direction so that we can write the ordinance properly. Oh, I'm sorry. We've got written comments to read
Okay.
in as well.
At this time, Ms. Diana, our assistant planner, will go ahead and read in some comments that were sent in ahead of time. So, yeah, thank you, Diane. So just bear with us as she reads those into the record.
So I have 3 different email letters to read. The first one is from Western Home Builders. Western Home Builders, is that on? I'm sorry. Western Home Builders, Inc., nearing completion of the 32 located on National Park Drive. The project was designed based on the current Vacation Home Rental Ordinance. The main design feature driven by ordinance compliance was detached single-family units. There was a substantial additional cost to build 32 detached single-family units as opposed to attached apartments. I have the following comments after reviewing the material in the agenda packet for tonight's hearing. 1, our project was designed to meet the criteria of 19.41020. 2, limiting permits to 1 per owner will preclude us from proceeding with VHR after making a substantial investment based on current ordinances. 3, our project is built per requirements of Specific Plan 10. The intent and purpose of Specific Plan 10 to establish land uses that are compatible with the Joshua Tree Park and comply with the appropriate low-profile, natural, tourist-oriented facility and amenity purposes. 4, our project is located in the northwest section of Specific Plan 10. The objective of this section of the plan is to encourage a higher quality, attractive, architecturally compatible development of rental units, condominium units, or timeshare condominiums to complement the other developments in the plan. Using the provisions of Section 109.176.050 implementation, integrated and compatible commercial tourist uses may be approved. While this specific plan was adopted in 2016 prior to the current vacation home business, I believe that the vacation home rentals would meet the intent of the specific plan. My suggestion is to focus on mitigating the problems, not restricting the business opportunity. For example, noise, parking, light, etc. The changes on the draft ordinance do a good job of addressing the problems. I suggest that paragraphs P and Q should be eliminated. Consider the different zones, specific plans, when implementing the changes to the ordinance. Thank you for your consideration. Steve Enochs. So the next letter is from Neighbors 29 Palms Neighbors. Please read. Okay. We, the undersigned, support the following revisions to the draft VHR ordinance. 19.41.060 permit renewal. Permits are renewed yearly. An unrenewed permit is equivalent to not having a permit. A permit shall not be renewed if there are unresolved city code compliance cases, outstanding fines or fees, or city lien. Permit renewal applications will be subject to a field inspection every 3 years to ensure that conditions at initial application are still in force, including safety compliance, number of bedrooms, and other physical characteristics of the structure. 19.41.065 permit issuance. P, permit cap. The maximum number of VHRs permitted within the city of 29 Palms shall not exceed 10% of the total single-family housing stock. Q, permit limit per entity. Permits are limited to 2 per entity per the following provision. A vacation rental permit shall not be issued to any business entity other than a limited liability company, a natural person, limited liability company, or personal or family trust shall not maintain any financial interest in more than 2 vacation home rentals. For this purpose, financial interest includes both legal and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides for receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rental. An owner shall only be issued and can only maintain 2 vacation rental registration certificates at any time. And then the last one is from Darcy Phillips. I am writing in support of the proposed changes to the ordinances regarding short-term vacation rentals under consideration at tonight's meeting of the Planning Commission. I believe a percentage cap on the number of permits allowed in city limits should be set at 10%. I also support a limit on the number of properties an entity, whether an individual or any kind of business, may have permitted as an STVR, specifically no more than 2 under one name. I personally believe that any listing for an STVR through any listing site should have the city permit number listed on the housing site. Thank you for your consideration of this very exigent matter.
Thank Thank you, Diane. And I do want to apologize. Mr. Mendoza did ask you a question. That was so rude of me, so I just wanted to apologize. It's been eating me up sitting up here the whole time, but I did pay attention to Diane. Okay. All right, now let's sort this whole thing.
All right. So what I would like to do is go through the recommendations again and just, again, poll you all. If we need to take a vote, let's do that, again, with the goal of proceeding to draft the ordinance here and bring it back to you at a public hearing for consideration. So the first item was just to replace item D, the parking with the new item D.
So you kind of want to, it's very informal. This isn't setting it in stone. This is just getting, it still has to go through its process, reviewed by the lawyers and before it's presented. So this is just, do we agree on this? Is this further discussion time? So do we agree? We could either do like a show of hands, agree or not, and then you're just going to keep okay. So everyone who agrees, go ahead and raise your hand.
Well, were we going to clarify that if it's not overnight, you have on-street parking as long as it's legal parking, but then in the evening, somebody has 3 vehicles, but they're still on the property, 2 in the driveway, 1 in the garage. Is that of the VHR? Are we saying? I'm confused by that. Because it says here, the number of shall not exceed the available on-site parking spaces. So if I have a garage and I could have 3 vehicles even though I have 2 rooms. Correct? Okay.
Yep.
I'm good.
So you're good with the language as it is written?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's how we're interpreting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is that if I go rent a 1-bedroom, but I have a 2-car garage, I could have 2 cars because that doesn't exceed the on-site parking.
You can park 2 cars in the garage and 2 on the driveway.
Right, you could essentially
You
have,
could have 4 cars.
because you have enough on-site.
Yeah,
But it's not like 2 are in the front lawn, 1's in the front of the gate on the easement, and 1's in the street.
Yeah.
So,
As it's written, it's confusing.
Okay.
Because number of vehicles parked allowed vacation home rental shall be limited to 1 vehicle per bedroom unit.
but then the but kind of
But then
negates.
why do we need the first part? It should simply say,
In no
overnight
case.
parking is limited to the number of spaces that are
Available on-site parking spaces.
on-site parking, yes. Because Ms. Templo made a very important point, was there could be where myself and my sister rent a vacation rental, but we're driving from 2 different locations, and it may be a 1-bedroom place.
Right, but you're on 5 acres, and there's tons of, right. So I think as it's written, we do not agree. We can move to the next one. We
So
just
it's
need better language on that.
The maximum number of vehicles parking overnight allowed at the vacation home rental shall in no case shall exceed the number of vehicles. In no case shall the number of vehicles shall exceed the number of available on-site parking spaces.
Yes, I'm happy
Yeah.
with that.
So you can, So-
I believe the intent is that if you have 4 bedrooms, it says you can have 4 cars, except that if you only have 2 parking spaces, you can only have 2 cars, even though you have a 4-bedroom home.
Right, so you're,
So if you have a 4-bedroom home and you want to have 4 cars, you need to have 4 designated parking spaces.
Okay, but I think Mr. Krushat's recommendation covers that.
the maximum number of vehicles.
Maximum
parked-
number of vehicles is limited to the number of on-site parking spaces. So it doesn't matter whether you have 4 bedrooms and only 2 spots, 1 bedroom and 10 spots.
I believe that the intent is to say if you have 2 bedrooms, you can have 2 cars. But if you have 4 bedrooms and only 2 parking spaces, you can only have 2 cars.
That's what this says. I mean, I know, that's what this says. I
But
mean,
we also
because-
just mentioned if we have a garage, we can put 1 in the garage and still have 2 out.
Well, that counts as an on-site parking space. So if you have you can park 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars on the driveway, you've got 4 cars, if the person has that.
so is the point that it doesn't matter about the bedrooms, it matters about the available parking
The
on
max about
site?
Available parking, on-site available parking is what is the key.
Okay. So
And
what-
then, of course, it follows the this is violation, there's too many cars, now I can't park in front of my house because they're all over parking this, at this vacation home rental, right? We're trying to get to something, right, that we can hold to a violation or to,
For overnight parking.
Maximum number of vehicles parking overnight
Shall
shall not exceed the available on-site parking spaces.
Yes.
Maybe, but also include shall have a minimum of two. The first part of this, of the
Okay.
paragraph was struck, that you have a minimum of two, but in no cases exceed the number.
I'm happy with that.
Have consensus on that, and move on?
okay, so,
Striking the requirement for 2 consecutive nights, in agreement with that, or
No.
maintain? No?
We very specifically put that in because if you allow just single night rentals, you're in effect permitting a hotel.
and isn't that in the state or?
There's no enforcement of it. If we, why write it in here if we can't enforce it? We're not gonna enforce it.
Well, even if the person stayed and left, the person who owns the house has that requirement, they're getting paid 2 days, they're not gonna have another booking, so it does maybe there's a backdoor deals, of course, but if you're doing it through like the, you know, a scheduled
The
booking.
city can't enforce them having a 2-night minimum booking.
There's no way for the city to know if that house had a 2-night minimum, because it's always handled by a third party.
So what's the point of having them in there if we can't
We can't enforce it.
enforce it and maintain it?
I thought, I believe I saw this somewhere else, like either it was like the, like original, you know, not just 29 Palms, like it's a pretty standard 2-night minimum across a lot of the
Yeah.
ordinances.
I think that's, a lot of that is the vacation home rental owners that
Have
set that
self-imposed that.
because it's cleaning fees and everything else, you know, it makes it easier on them. But if it's something we can't enforce, what's the purpose of having it in there? And
Because
if the
people-
vacation home rental wants to say, no, I'm gonna have a 2-night minimum, fine. But there are probably some that say, no, I wanna have the ability to have a 1-night minimum for somebody just rolling through town, going from LA to Texas. They wanna stay here for the evening, so they want a vacation home rental, so they can cook a nice meal. They don't wanna get a hotel, so, but we're negating that, the ability for them to do that of something we can't enforce or won't enforce.
So
We don't have the ability to enforce it.
okay, point well received. Do you see anything that is like legal or illegal of us choosing to strike this or not?
No.
Okay, so then, we have 1 nay.
So my concern is obviously minimum stays. If we only allow them the 1 stay, then that means they can get 30 people in there, do whatever they want all night long, because there's really no repercussions, because they can't get kicked out because they're done by the time they get called in and they're gone the next day.
And even though we may not directly be able to enforce it, if the vacation home rental owner is aware that there is a 2-night minimum, they're much more likely to impose that themselves. There are a lot of things that are in city ordinances, both in this community and others, that are not directly enforceable.
I did prefer the 2 days, so it's hard for me to say strike it because of,
Well, that was the suggestion of the committee. So you had a 7-person committee that suggested striking that for the reasons that Max very eloquently stated.
And I
But that
simply-
doesn't mean we have to push that forward. I mean, yes.
And I
we as the
simply
planning
disagree with
commission, we
that.
can sit there and say, we reviewed it, we reviewed the committee's recommendation, and we decided this is better.
yeah, I mean, you guys have talked about this 5 months, 9 meetings, so that's just personal opinion, so I don't know if you have enough to make a note of what you want to
I'm
do.
hearing 3,
3,
leave it in, and 2, strike it.
Anybody willing to reconsider, or?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
That
Moves
was
this
a
along, I mean, it's not, this isn't a die-hard issue for me.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
not for me.
All right, you can
That
keep it in
was
there.
a key
The committee
point when the
recommended, so-
ordinance was originally written.
Okay, all right, so proceeding with leaving it in.
Leave it in.
Yep.
Okay. This is the section that establishes a different and new set of fines for operating without a permit. License. We'll change all this to say license.
Okay, license.
And again, suggestion to move it to non-compliance.
So is there a website or anything that any person can go on to see if this house is a Airbnb, a permitted, yeah, facility or licensed?
Yeah, we still have host compliance, which does the check on addresses and parcel numbers. Doesn't always catch, everyone, but catches a majority of them that are operating without a license.
The only question I had on this one was there any state laws that have limits already set and sometimes how much you could charge a VHR, say like city-wise? That was my only concern.
Yeah, there was,
Mhm.
it was, I want to say $2,500, but state law has increased it now to $5,000.
Oh, okay, good, because I think what I was looking at was like 2019 or the older one, so I wasn't sure when it, or maybe it was 21, but I just wanted to make sure that if we're enforcing these that we have, and I know the lawyers will catch everything anyways, but yeah, I'm okay with this
Yeah, I
one.
think we had this.
I'm actually happy if it was more. But I'm fine with it.
I think it's good where it is.
All right.
Spent a lot of time talking about it, I'm good with it.
Okay, all right. That
Well, let's
remains
revisit
in,
it
but
then.
it gets moved to the non-compliance section.
So license issuance.
So that is quite a increase, so that
Yeah.
should send a message. Okay, vacation home rental shell. This just gets to the cap, so I'll just go straight to, and this language definitely needs to be cleaned up. But the question is, do we want to establish a cap based on the number of detached single-family houses? And if so, what is that percentage? I do know that Yucca Valley recently passed amendments to their ordinance, and they established a 10% cap.
Good for you for that.
Okay, so just so I have an understanding, we could set a cap, but I don't want to open this huge thing if you guys have already discussed it about the geospatial, you're close to me, or was it just a cap set?
Go ahead, Max.
We talked about the geospatial density thing. We spent 2 meetings just basically talking about that. There was we could not come up with a reasonable way to do it and to maintain it, monitor it, and keep it fair. And somebody brought up the thing that, if I want to put a pool in my backyard, I have to get a permit for it, to get approval from the city. That doesn't mean the city's going to, in a 300, 500-foot radius, you can't now have a pool because we're trying to conserve water, because this person applied for the permit first. And that's kind of how we looked at it and said, and that having that explanation or that example really changed my mind on the density thing, and that was like one of my main goals, was to come up with a way to do the density.
That's a good way. I do agree on the 10%, and I'm sorry if I can't see everyone, but I am curious though how that affects such a place as the 35 units together. If he has all of his permits in before anybody and we hit that 10% cap, he's good.
That doesn't affect him so much because we're far, far away from a 10% cap. It's the limit per entity or per person would affect him greatly.
Okay, so that'll be another slide. How do we feel about putting the cap on the total VHR permits per detached single family?
Well,
Do we agree?
is this, well, I mean, okay, I'm going to say my 5 cents worth. Philosophically wise, I believe that economic conditions will control the limit, okay? But I understand that a lot of people, it came out that most people were for a cap of one way or the other. I don't think a 10% cap that's too low in my book. They left it open. They didn't say we wanted 10, that's why they brought it to us. If you absolutely say we have to have a cap, I would look more along the lines of 19%.
Wow, I was thinking 7.
I think Mr. Kruschak has struck the heart of the matter. The market is going to determine. And if vacation home rentals start to go out of style, or people buying up the properties have spent so much money that they have to have nightly rental rates that are very excessive, they're not gonna get those. So I think if you look at a capitalistic free market economy, that's exactly what it is. The market demands control of the economics.
I think the concern for, the other perspective is that if there is no cap, then you could end up pretty much like Joshua Tree, where you got 25% or so, I don't know what the latest figure is, of your housing stock in VHR. The ramifications of that is it does provide limited options for people who are looking for long-term rentals or even home ownership, because a big chunk of that market has been taken away.
No.
I think that was part of the rationale.
Yeah, but the issue I have with using Joshua Tree is because the County of San Bernardino, that's an unincorporated, they did not have a regulation on vacation home rentals, and everybody was doing it. If you have a regulation in place where you have to walk in and ensure the health and safety of the building and that what you're doing, that reduces the number greatly, because they were making everything a vacation home rental out there. Every shack, because there was no regulation. We at least had regulation, and that does, in its own case, it limits. I would use another example in my area, where I have, of the 6 homes in my area, 4 are vacation home rentals. One gets rented all the time. Another one doesn't get rented. Another one, the guy's turned it back into a long-term vacation because he doesn't want to deal with vacation home or short-term vacation home rentals. I mean, those are the kind of economic conditions I think we're dealing with. And people, I think, are jumping the gun when they say, yes, we have to have a limit, because we see a lot of permits coming in at the same time. Now, if you do want to have a limit, I wanted a limit that will set, that'll kind of, I don't know. I think we're going to hit 10% too fast. And 10% is a real low number. We've got 5,800 and some single-family homes. And we have a transient community anyway. What's the percentage of those are rentals, long-term rentals? I've always heard the figure like 64%.
It's about, that's about
It's
correct.
about 64% of our homes right now are transient homes.
Well, they're rentals.
Rural rentals,
Yeah.
okay.
But a lot of them are changing
Yeah.
to the Airbnb. Like my neighbor next door was told he needs to be out by next month because they're selling the house, making it an Airbnb.
And the other thing is, even if we set a limit, okay, that doesn't, the density issue is not going to be, that's gone. You're still going to have popular areas that you're going to have homes with clusters. The other thing I would make is, and that's not going to lower the rents right away, because a lot of people have invested in homes, and the high rents are driven by the fact that it's more expensive to build homes now, the popularity of Palms and the high desert. Those are all driving rental prices up.
Driving home prices up.
But
Yeah.
as someone who is currently renting a home, I am not at all happy with the home I am renting. It's way too big for what I need, but I can't find anything else that is smaller that would much fit me better and be cheaper, that is not, run down piece of property, right?
Yeah, but even if we have a cap, that's not going to resolve that issue.
Well, not right away, no, but it will at some point in time, or we're gonna become like Joshua Tree, where 30% of our houses are vacation home rentals, and there's nothing to rent in this town. And then it's hard to walk that back.
Right, because to Max's point, and we could probably go on and on and on for this, and it's a very important topic that we set because it's needed for the ordinance. But if we could put something on it, we can control it. This, like Max is saying, walk it back because we're like, oh well, can you give up yours? Can you give up yours? So we have to balance. Also, the city has to do that as well to be good.
Well, I understand that, and the city is also investing in affordable housing, or they're setting up for affordable housing for workers. I got that. That's one thing. I don't think rents are going to go down right away. If we want a cap, I want the cap to be something that's, a reasonable. I don't think 10% is a reasonable cap. I think that's too low.
How would you feel about 15%?
Right, I was just going to say.
Okay, we're negotiating. That's good. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll go with, if you demand a cap, if we're going to sit here and we're going to vote on a cap, I want as high a cap as possible. And if 15 is what we go with, I'd still push for 19.
Travis,
Are we going to
do
recommend
we have a
cap?
calculator? What is 5,800 rounded down 15%?
580.
15%. 10%
Yeah,
is
'cause 10's
579.
It'd be closer to 900.
About 870, if using 5,800 as the I used 5,800. So 870 is 15%.
So knowing that we just sat through our housing, entire presentation and how we need housing, and yes, we have one element coming through, is 15 reasonable, Travis, or is that way too high?
This is going to all to
Yeah.
decide, but,
Okay.
again.
I like 10,
I just,
and I moved
I
up
like
from 7.
25.
I know, so I don't want to go higher than 10.
15. I mean, if we have to, if we're sitting there and we're going to say we have to, okay, how many are for a cap? So I got 3
I'm
to 2.
done for a cap.
3 to 2.
I will do a cap.
Okay.
Now, if I get to speak,
Yep.
let me bring up some points.
Mhm.
First of all, does not address semi-attached. We have a mother-in-law casino. It's by a breezeway. No shared walls. Why can't that be a vacational rental?
We brought that issue in front of the commission when I first started here, and the commission decided that that was not acceptable. It had to be completely separate.
Okay?
Which doesn't have a shared wall.
One of the things that
But it's
everybody seems to be
attached.
talking about with the issue of affordable housing. And the other side of that they're not addressing is wages. So do we want to put an artificial cap on rental prices when maybe a good problem is what service workers are paid? There is one city and one county in the entire country that a person who works a full-time minimum wage job can afford to rent a piece of property, be it an apartment, duplex, condo, whatever. One city, one county. That tells me it's not a vacational rental problem. It is a market problem. Houses are selling for over $1 million out here that are not being turned into vacational rentals, and that is pricing people out of the market. And I'm sorry, but if you run a business and you pay somebody minimum wage, that's not right. Minimum wage should be a livable wage, not high off the hog, but you should be able to afford basic housing. In the Bay Area, somebody making $250,000 a year cannot afford to buy a single-family home. That's not a vacational rental issue. And so we need to look at that before we get all hot and bothered about the vacation, or that the housing stock is because of vacational rentals.
Yeah, that's not.
I don't believe it is solely because of vacation home rentals, the lack of rental houses in Trinidad Palms. But a lot of it is people teleworking from LA, they're like, I can get out of the big city and come work here during the week, or, whatever. And they're buying homes and staying in them half the time or doing whatever they're doing. But if we don't, we can limit this one part of the problem so it doesn't become a much bigger problem in 3-5 years down the road. We can stop it from becoming a bigger problem now. We can't mandate people to pay people more than minimum wage for what jobs they're doing. We can't do that. We can't dictate the prices people charge for rent. I suppose we could, or rental cap, but we can't dictate who you sell your house to. But we can say, this is the number of vacation home rentals the city is going to permit. We can't go over that. That stock helps solve one portion of the problem.
Stating it that way, I agree with you,
Okay.
but
Oh.
that's not the way it appears.
Okay, so,
Okay.
so if we've got 3 to 2, okay, so we're gonna have a cap. Are we gonna set a cap here right now?
For the purpose of the ordinance, we
I
need
think
to.
we need
I need
to.
direction.
Keep
So
moving
can we
forward.
have,
got to.
can we do 10% who agrees? Okay, so you got 2 to 3 on a 10%.
Right.
12%.
I like 12%.
Can you budge to 12%?
11%.
25%. We're gonna play those games.
Yeah,
I
mean,
can-
we're gonna do this. I mean, we said 15.
12
plus
is what,
19.
700?
You wanna take an average? 18.5.
I think 15 is higher than I wanted to go originally, but I think it's a to give equal opportunity to everyone, it's a fair number.
I don't know, I think 12, I mean, looking at 12, I could do 12.
Okay, I could do 12. Three 12s.
The majority.
Max, 12 or 15?
He just said 15. Max just said 15.
I like 12 a lot better than 15. I would like to go 12, but if the group wants to go higher than 12, I will do 15.
I don't think there's anything wrong with 15. I think 15 is a fair number, and that's what we're going to get to.
Okay,
I mean, 'cause
all in
you had
favor of
two people that
12.
wanted 19.
Okay.
All right. I have 12. I have direction.
It's not that this is written in stone either. It can totally be
Did we have three
readdressed
for 12?
given
We
our
did.
situation
Okay.
in the future.
I want to make sure I'm on the record opposing that.
Again, this will be brought back to public.
Yes, yeah, this is just enough to get something written to bring before the lawyers. So we have to agree enough to make that.
Okay, and the next one is any caps on the number, or limit, I should say, on the number a person or entity can own as far as vacation home rental.
Well, we already dipped into the market. We've already are trying to control the market. We're coming in, we're affecting the distribution, resourcing, and productivity of an economic entity. So to make it fair, we've got to limit how many VHR permits, licenses, how many VHR one entity is allowed to have. In that case, then we'll have to go to 2. Once you set a limit, you've already dipped your hands in there.
And so those who have more, what is their grandfathered in versus the old?
That would be something the city council would have to weigh in on.
Well, no, I think you do. They're right now, if they have 4 permits, then they're what?
We have the word is non-conforming,
Yeah.
Yeah, non-conforming.
but I
So-
would think you would want some sort of policy for how you'd want to deal with
And
that.
then, wouldn't city council state that these are going to be non-conforming for 3 years, and then at the 3rd-year mark, they don't get renewed, half their permits, they get brought down to the 2.
That's one option. You could
That's
wait,
up to city
you could wait till
council,
they, eventually
Our
they,
decision is to, are we
But
going to?
what does that do to Western home builders?
Well, why would Western home builders, if they wanted to build a motel, they should have built a motel. I mean, to sit there and say, all those units over there, I want to be able to turn every single one of those units out there on National Car Park Drive into, have the possibility to be a vacation home rental.
I do feel
And I
like
mean, that's one company that's trying, that's a commercial entity that's,
a property management company
Yeah.
trying to manage property in
trying to
short-term
take
or
advantage
long-term.
of the Vacation home rentals originally were supposed to, I have a vacation home, or I want to rent my home out. That's originally what it was meant to do. Allow me that option.
And given the current ordinance at the time of his development, it was allowed. This for me is very difficult, and I don't know if we're gonna come to an agreement tonight.
I don't think, just because we put a cap on the total number of
It does, yeah.
Limiting how many you can have, I don't think that's, the vast majority, aren't owned by companies, they're people trying to have 15 of them, right? People have 4, 3, they have the ability to have more than one, fine. I don't think we should limit how many you can have.
But the license would be for each one of those homes in the given circumstance of that 35 property.
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah, each
so
one
So
would
you're
require a
going to give
license.
one guy 35 properties.
if
And?
he applies for 35 licenses.
Well, no, I don't, no, my issue is, once we've already set a limit, we had no limit, yeah, go.
But we have a
Do what you want.
cap, so,
But now we have a cap on an economic entity, and you were talking about being fair across the board, where everybody has a shot at this economic entity, which is this license, this vacation home rental
Okay,
license.
what is the difference if I go out and buy 25 rental properties and use them as rental properties and get the income?
You're mixing actually, because we don't have a limit on long-term rentals. Yes, you can do that. We've limited short-term rentals. The minute we stuck our hands in and limited the number of short-term rentals, we've limited the number of licenses for a,
I have to disagree with that. I could
well,
consider limiting the number of vacation home rental permits that are held by a corporation. I don't think we should put that limitation on private individuals.
well,
Because I don't see being able to own 4 or 5 or even 10 as a private individual any different than owning that many rental properties?
Can you do that? Can you sit there and say private individuals, but corporations can't when corporations are considered an entity?
I definitely want the attorney to look at
Yeah,
it.
I think you're gonna have the attorneys
So
look
you
at
have something called an LLC, right, which is limited.
limited liability
Right,
corporation.
and you will have families that will set up their interests. It still might be one.
But I understand both sides. We don't necessarily want a large company to come in here and get all the rental home or vacation home rentals. That's not the same playing field. They have millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if somebody, through their own money and hard work, can afford and wants to do 3 or 4 vacation home rentals, I don't have a problem with that. That's called entrepreneurship.
Well, we've already zapped
Right.
into entrepreneurship because we've already set the limit
Right, so,
on an economic entity.
We set
Right.
the limit to protect the
The
people-
housing
the
needs.
housing needs of the people of Tryon Palm. We're not setting a limit to limit people's economic abilities to make money. So if they want to have a vacation home rental and they have the ability to do it right now, they should get on the ball and start doing what they need to do to get one.
Okay,
You know?
so let's go back and then remove the limits, and then we don't.
But then,
Let's go back,
So
remove the
the
limit,
one
and then
we're
then
focusing-
you can have as many permits as you want.
the one we're focusing on now is, are we going to limit the amount per person? Or regardless of business, entity, anything like that? These are just examples as of January 24th, what it looks like currently. So,
I would say since we put a cap on it, we should say no.
Absolutely.
And if one person goes and buys all 800 and some properties, well, that's the cap and that's it.
so
How do you feel that, why would that,
because I guess to us, it doesn't matter who's having them. We just know that there's a limit protecting the housing availability.
My view is that, you've now limited something that is a viable product and you've already set in, so you should, okay.
could we,
If you took a vote right now, okay, I see.
So I'm hearing 3 for no limits.
They're saying no limit.
Well, I mean, you can also, I can play both sides of this too. You have one person that goes and buys 40 different things and then they default on their loans or whatever. Now all of a sudden, all these are going back as one property, where all of a sudden now they could be destroyed, broken into. I mean, now it's going to cause a economic default on the city because it's going to look terrible. Where at least if one thing happens and one person owns a couple of them, it's more easier to bounce back from than trying to.
I mean, other cities, Palm Springs has set a limit of 2, but they don't have a limit.
You don't have a cap.
They don't have a cap, but they set a limit of 2. And so we have a cap.
So you're just choosing the way you're reducing how they're gonna go about it. You're reducing the amount out of your pool, or you're reducing the amount of people who's going to get the house and put the house as a.
I think the cap's better.
The cap is good because no matter what, only 700, 800 we
whatever
have,
it is.
so 12%. But here, you're disagreeing because you want everyone to have, not just
I want everybody
one
to have-
person
yes, I
has
do want- now that
35,
you've
this
limited
guy
the
has
number,
12.
I'd like to give more of the opportunities across the wider base of people. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that too.
but it's, the numbers aren't saying that there's large corporations coming and buying.
For now.
But there's
Now-
only
see, now
800,
you've
so
set-
it's
now
fine.
you've set a cap.
Who,
Now you've set a cap. We've completely changed the market.
so you just are concerned who's getting the money, whether it's,
You know.
So
whether
now
it's
that we
one
set a
person or a
cap,
whole
Trust
per-
me,
like,
now that this cap's coming out, you're gonna get inundated.
Let's not, we already are.
Yeah, you're gonna get inundated with,
As soon as the word moratorium went out in public,
There we
the
go.
city got inundated.
Okay, so do you have what you need, or is this one to
No.
bring back? Okay.
No caps from me.
I'm hearing,
No caps per the owners.
Yes, I'm sorry. No limitations on the owner.
On the amount of license
on the
a
amount of
person or
licenses
entity,
any one single entity can have.
Right.
But you wanna set a cap on
the amount,
the amount of total homes that you can have in this
the
city.
touchable amount. Yes.
Okay.
2 no's.
I would like further information, and I know that's gonna come with the lawyers and what have you as this comes together. But I would say, no caps per person or entity.
No limitation, no limits.
No
on-
limit on
permit say you can have.
license.
Okay,
Mhm.
Okay. I'm hearing 4 and 1.
yeah.
Just to throw out another example, we have a limited amount of liquor licenses that we can do.
Right.
Nowhere does it say we limit a liquor license, one liquor license to a person.
No, we
If
don't.
somebody owns 4 liquor stores and a restaurant, they can have 5.
I mean, yeah, you can draw all kinds of analogies.
yeah.
Analogy is the worst form of argument, but I understand that.
If we hit,
It's already decided.
well, just asking a question. If we hit our percentage cap at 12%, goods like they, the beer and wine sales.
Come in for a CUP.
Could they come in for and be a CUP to have a vacation for home rental over the 12%?
Probably. No,
No. If you set a cap, then
you
that's.
said a cap, the cap is a cap.
And then, of course, it'll change per new development, so our numbers are gonna be changing, so the amount could possibly change. So the 12% is just gonna be a total based off the American consensus, or, what did you call it?
American Community Survey.
American community that's updated as we do our census that comes out. So it's gonna be a constantly ever-changing number, it's just based off development.
At our current rate, how fast are we gonna hit the, at 12%, that's
We're over half.
800.
We
Under
get
half.
anywhere from 5 to 7 a
That's
week.
696, or let's say 700, how fast are we gonna hit 700?
We get anywhere from 5 to 7 a week. That fluctuates, obviously.
Yeah, but once this comes out, then you're probably gonna get hit with about 10 to 15.
Well, but how many do you get initial applications for and they never follow up?
I mean, yeah, we only have 226 issued, 129 pending.
Yeah, it's almost like half and half.
Yeah.
We get a lot that are initially incomplete. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why it's taken so long to process them.
Yeah.
They just did not provide all the information.
They just wanted that paper in there.
They just want,
and-
exactly.
Right.
And so, maybe we're missing a driver's license from
Right.
the spouse or the insurance certificate or whatever. So it takes time, staff time, to go through these, make sure they're complete, and only then do we go out and do things like the safety inspection and all of that. So we've got several steps in that process for licensing.
But if it's incomplete, it's not thrown away.
At this point, we're giving people 60 days to get their information in.
That's
To
very
keep in that same
gracious.
spot in
Right.
line where they were.
Right.
So
Okay.
what about Mr. Mendoza's question about limiting between an individual and a corporation?
This is
I don't
one-
think you can do that.
This is one I want the attorney to,
Okay.
because we've got that gray area in the middle of the limited liability
So is this,
corporation.
so is this issue one thing we need, since we need more information, is this one we're just going to wait till you get the information back? and then
We
make a
could,
decision?
we
Okay.
could, yeah.
Does anybody have a problem with
I'm
that?
fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, so license issuance, we're looking at add a new item RQ. So the vacation home rental unit that is inactive for 12 months or longer shall be withdrawn from the city's list of permitted VHRs and not counted towards the cap.
And I'm sorry, just to go back to the other one, my suspicion is that it's okay. Obviously, Palm Springs has a limit, so I'm guessing. They did their due diligence with their city attorney, but I would want ours to look at it as well.
So define an active, the staffing needs help with defining active. Is 1 day rental within a year considered active? How would this be policed and through submission of a TO2 filing form?
Yeah, what is inactive? 2 days per month, 24 days per year?
Well, if I only rent it for 2 days in February and I don't for the whole rest of the year, that's once a year, am I inactive?
That's
Yeah,
what
I
we're
would
gonna
pretty much say
decide.
you're
I
active.
would, I would
So how would you know that?
I don't know.
probably less
Do a
than a month,
TOT filing.
but maybe 3 weeks.
Do you set a number,
Throughout
do
the year?
you want to set a number of days? You got 365 days a year, take 80% of that, or what, I don't know, what should be an active rental be? Because you've got a lot of people that are sitting there saying, well, sometimes I use it as a vacation home rental, and sometimes I go long-term. And so now you've got a property that sometimes it's long-term, sometimes it's a.
And isn't it their
short-
choice?
So what,
Right. And we do have folks that have vacation home rentals, and they don't necessarily lease them out.
The
Maybe
reason,
once a year, they will go on a vacation, and then that's when they'll lease them out. So that does happen.
the
It's not
reason for
common.
this, though, was to limit the uncomfortable saying, if we put a cap in, limit somebody saying, I'm gonna go through the process, get a license, and I'm never going to rent this house, so I can suck up a number
Oh,
of the cap.
that's.
So that's why we put this in place.
I think that was more with
Yeah.
the density, but yeah, you're
Well,
right.
right.
It
Yeah,
applies with the
same thing.
caps.
But
So I think we need to determine what do we think, or
My-
what is our suggestion
My
as the
personal
planning
feeling
commission?
is to be active, it
Yeah.
needs to be 10%. So if there's 365 days, they need to rent it 36 days out of the year.
Okay, that is going to require more administration, just
I
letting you know.
understand.
So that, right now, our TOT form says, how much did you make? And, here's the percentage that you owe. We can add a line that says how many days, but then we've got to start on a staff level accumulating that for whatever we end up with, $700 of. There's some information there.
And permits are or licenses are every 3 years?
Renewed every,
Oh,
The
renewed
safety
every year?
inspection, the
Okay.
safety
Oh,
one is
safety,
every
okay. So renewed every year. It would take a lot on the staff to go, okay, I have 355, how many times were they rented per a TOT filing, and then have statistical data that would prove how often these things are being
It's a
used
lot
or
of work.
not.
would it be
Right.
easier to set a percentage of TOT tax they have to contribute?
But wait a minute,
No.
don't we
Like-
require them to maintain records for 3 years of the rentals?
Somebody would still have to.
I understand
audit
that, but
yeah.
that would be easy to do. And still, yes, I understand.
I don't think it's easy.
Well,
I mean, we could look at changing our management system and put the question in there, but then how do you verify that that's actually
Yeah,
what
if
happened?
you could have the system flag like, hey, this has not been rented for the last 6 months, 9 months, or
But
12 months, but,
we're still relying on them to put the data in,
mm,
and if it's not verified, then it's just what they put in.
so
yeah, this is
so
tough.
we have something that we really can't enforce or follow.
we can't even define.
Yeah, we can't even define.
But the purpose is to not have all of us who just want to get the placard to have the number go down so the cap's met, right? That's the whole idea, is that I'm never going to rent my house, but I have a placard so I can take one of your numbers.
I think so, although I would point out there's a cost to doing that, obviously.
Right, but if the cost meant I
And
would,
with these changes, that cost is going to go up, obviously, because there's more time needed.
So because we put a cap on, the cost will go up because
Well,
it'll be
it's-
limited?
It's the collection of all of these changes.
it's just whatever our, if that's requiring more time from staff, it's going to end up having a higher fee because you have so many things you have to continuously ensure are being followed properly.
I
That's
So-
correct.
So,
Well, I don't know that we can define inactive without imposing a great deal of extra cost and time to staff, which we don't have adequate staff now. City manager, if you're here, that's directed at you. But,
and I also would be, because what if it is one time a year that I want to rent my house because I fly to France or somewhere for 2 weeks, and then is 2 weeks one time that I rented it, or is it 14 days that it's considered? So that would, and what if that's all that I wanted it for, because somebody loves renting my house during the summer when I'm gone, right?
Okay.
That's tough.
So I'm sensing not a lot of support for this one. Okay.
Yeah. But I think that the staff has the capability of managing, hey, maybe there could be a report that's ran annually, how many times the lower ones, hey, are you really still considering this? Like, because I know,
Go ahead.
I know that once the cap's met, people on the waiting list are gonna be like, hey, I know that one doesn't get rented. I know Susan, she lives over here, she doesn't ever use this. How can I get to a permit number?
Well, the fees might help change that, I mean, why pay an annual fee if you're not going to get the benefit of renting it, so.
I mean,
But I think you'd have to be pretty dead set against any vacational rentals to go through
I
the
think,
expense just to hold on to a permit to keep somebody
I
else.
think this was more set for the density issue than it was just the overall people getting a license and not ever using it. It was to help with the density issue if we were gonna figure out a way to do the density.
I think the only way you could do something like this is say, okay, did they pay any TOT taxes last year? If they didn't pay any TOT taxes last year, then it's inactive. But like you said, that could be one day.
It could.
So what is the purpose of, how do,
So then they have to rent to keep an active license, it has to be rented
They-
once a year.
Yeah,
1 day a year.
yeah.
Basically.
that's it, that's all we can say.
Yeah.
We want to keep that in there.
Yeah, and that TOT will make it easy for everyone to see. They got it,
And
boom.
Yeah, and I think it was brought up in your committee, in the committee to help us with this because they wanted to make sure that it was being used, right? So-
Right, they want to make sure, if you're going to limit the number of licenses you have, you want to make sure that the licenses that are out there are being used.
Yeah.
So, one day equals active.
Okay, we're
TOT
defining
taxes.
active as
Defining
at
Yes.
least,
Some
at a
TOT
minimum,
taxes.
1 day,
So
as
how am I
verified by the
involved in it?
TOT.
I would like,
I'd like to go back and look at that, but
I would like to address a term, permit versus license.
I thought we agreed with license.
No, I didn't agree.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm bringing it up. License indicates a proven level of professionalism and competence. A licensed physician, a licensed attorney, a licensed smog inspection technician. This does not require that. This is a permit.
Well, what about a business license? I don't have a business permit. I have a business license. And the only thing you have to do
Exactly,
to get a
that's-
business, the only thing I have to do to get a business license is fill out a few forms. I don't have to show an expertise in
Well,
business.
but I'm saying a business using a license in that term where you don't have to demonstrate a level of professionalism or professional knowledge is a permit.
Well, that's what we're learning to do by them having to take that class.
No, but we don't issue a business permit. We issue a business license. Exactly the
And
same
some of
thing.
this is how our software is structured, okay? Any of these management softwares, they branch out into two trunks. One is the permit, and the whole workflow of a permit is designed that this happens only one time. Okay, the other is the license module, and that is something that's renewed annually, usually. So that's what we're trying to do, is getting our naming nomenclature consistent with the system that we're using. Because we'll ask our software company, well, can we make the software do this? And they're like, no, because that's a license, it's not a permit. The functionality of the two. So I think, the example of the business license is really what we're talking about here.
I have to disagree, but I'm not voting.
All right. So 1 day, we agreed 1 day is okay.
Yes.
All right, next one, noise mitigation plan. I think it's probably a good idea, it just needs to be defined, what the minimum of that is. So.
Yep.
Noise monitoring system.
We had brought that up. Frank worked with the city attorney, and I am pretty certain the city attorney said that was not going to be legal because
What's something?
the noise monitoring system.
The noise monitoring system, yeah.
Why?
It was something to do with people's privacy, that the system that was presented to the city attorney, I think, had the ability to maybe monitor conversations. That was kind of early on in our discussions. So it was, 6 months ago.
That was like if you had a blink or you had some type of camera that you could peek into your, like they were just speaking
Right.
probably more of like
and-
that type of.
and as Jim pointed out, you can't even tell, having a decibel meter doesn't really, depending on how you use that, where you use that, and how far from the property.
Or how
you
far
can't
from
really
the
define-
device.
You can't,
Our
yeah.
noise ordinance is very confusing
Yeah.
as to what you have to do to say these people are being too loud. So, if anything, we should maybe look at the noise regulations than anything. But
I think our noise ordinance gives a decibel amount.
right, and
I know.
who has a decibel meter?
And the problem is that they have issues with how you measure that decibel.
It's very
It's
subjective.
very subjective in how you can measure it, where you measure it from. And you know as well as I know that, getting outside on a clear night, even conversation can carry a long way out in the desert. It's normal. So are we saying the noise mitigation plan must have these elements?
That's what it would have to be.
And then, yeah,
And like I said, some cities have, required that you put a placard up on the wall,
Like signage letting them know
right,
that.
exactly.
do you
And,
want a decision on what those elements should be in the noise mitigation plan?
we could come back and suggest something, but if you're saying it has to have something, then I want to include that.
Yeah, I think we should define what the noise mitigation plan should be.
I think we should have
'Cause
a
I could-
noise mitigation plan, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And then now the red ink is stating that you're requesting each VHR license would have this noise mitigation plan, and it's on file with the city, so you're gonna manage the 800 different, their versions of a mitigation plan?
Well, that's why I'm saying they should have some requirements, so we're not managing 800.
Oh, okay.
Right.
You must meet these 5 widgets. If you choose to go stronger than these 5 widgets, that's
Right.
your
And
choice.
it'll just be
But at a
part of the
minimum,
file.
these are the things you must,
Right.
the plan you must present to your renters, your guests.
As a minimum, yes.
Yeah, it's like health and safety, you know, we require a fire extinguisher and remote carbon monoxide in bedrooms. One fire extinguisher at the kitchen, an evacuation plan, so it could be something like that.
Okay, and then they just provide you a copy of, here's what we give our,
Here's what we're doing, right,
Oh, okay.
exactly.
Can I ask a question? Since we started the special group that is monitoring complaints on VHRs, that was supposed to run from, what, January through April?
Mhm.
How many complaints are we getting on noise?
Probably maybe once a month, I would say,
Once a month?
yeah.
So, okay. Noise from VHRs doesn't seem to be an issue.
It's not a huge issue, that's correct.
Yeah.
There's sure been a lot of talk about it.
well, the potential.
Well, but we can't deal with potential
Yeah.
because we
R-
could
right.
potentially have an earthquake tomorrow.
But I think that's why we're putting in the requirement to have this plan is to help mitigate the issue.
To know your expectations so that you can
And
follow
I
something.
don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that. I really don't. That's fine.
So,
You can convince me not to have a decibel meter because I understand the technical limits, but I think there needs to be a mitigation plan on file.
Okay. And let's just define the elements of what that
Exactly.
mitigation plan should be.
and then there's a word tenant in there if it has to change to guest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do a word search on
Okay.
that. Yeah, I would suggest things like posting the placard about noise, including handing out pamphlets.
Would it be posted in the house, or is it included in like a
I would say
booklet on
in
the?
the house, probably right by the evacuation.
It's probably
Right
both.
next
Oh,
to the
okay.
evacuation plan.
Okay.
It's probably both. They can post it in the house, and then also when you sign your rental agreement with them, you also have to, good hosts have a noise mitigation plan that you would sign, say, I've read this, but they also would have it somewhere in the home for people to look at as well.
I do know a lot of vacational rental owners and managers have a whole packet
Yes.
that is given to whoever rents the property. This is what you're allowed to do, this is what you're not allowed to do, et cetera, and it can be included in that.
Yeah, why don't we come up with some minimums and bring it back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, moving along.
Okay.
This is just a word change from tenant to guest.
That's no problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, minor insertion, parking overnight, just defining the number of vehicles. I think we took care of the number of vehicles
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Okay. Striking out the language on animals, we're okay on that.
And this is because that's in
Yeah,
a
It's
animal
covered-
code.
It's covered somewhere else in the.
There's an existing city ordinance concerning animal.
And
Yeah.
it's
Animal
tied
control.
back to.
Yeah.
You just,
So there's a reference in our
Yes.
ordinance regarding animals, but not this particular language spelled out.
That's
Got it. I'm okay.
We're fine with that.
Yes.
Okay. This is the classes and instructions. We believe it's a good idea. This would require it now.
I don't have a problem with that. And I know hotels are required to do their spotting human trafficking things. I don't personally see where there'd be a lot of human trafficking in vacation home rentals. But to learn how to, if you're not experienced as a vacation home rental owner or operator, I think classes would be fine.
And this is just a certificate they print and go, here, I passed the course online?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
but that's part of their permitting process.
That's
Yes.
correct.
For their
So this
license.
Their
would be-
licensing
For their
process.
license slash
Licensing,
permit.
yes.
Right.
Slash
They would have to complete this.
For their
part.
permission to operate.
That's correct.
Okay, I think
This is a limit,
And then we're referencing that code for them, though?
right.
So, it's reference code.
reference signage code regarding that
Yeah,
particular.
We'll
yeah.
still have an item in miscellaneous condition, but it would just reference conformance to the existing sign code.
Yes.
Oh, it is in there already?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why
Sign
we,
requirements in another section.
that's why we struck that one out. We were just trying to get rid of redundancy.
Okay, all right.
Well, because it's talking about advertising a giant sign, and then it's talking about I am a VHR. There's two different signage, so we just want to make sure that we are just saying, yes, you still need a sign, but here's more signage code per the city.
Yeah, the other section that it's in limits the size of the sign.
Perfect.
Okay, this clarifies the violations of per event, and as I heard earlier, it's really per day, and I would want to put that in to clarify that that's what the intent, that event equals day. Okay. This is increase in the violation amounts.
Yep.
Consistency there.
Yes.
And this is the definition. This is the one, again, it's a little.
Right, going over priority violations, procedural, or disturbance,
Right.
and what those would be.
Yeah, what was the word Frank used?
Are procedural and disturbance violations like a subcategory of priority?
Right, yes, and I think the reason we broke that into categories was so if somebody, vacation home rental, leaves their trash can out for 2 days, it would be a violation, yes, but I correct me, I thought the intent was for that not to be a punitive violation for the trash can.
You mean a citation? A fine?
Yes. That's what I had thought, because we said everybody forgets to bring their trash can in every now and then. I drive down my street on a Wednesday, trash can pick up Monday. I drive down my street Wednesday, there's at least 5 trash cans out every week.
But isn't it still like a muni code violation, a code enforcement violation?
Somebody
It is.
in
So-
the general population, that if their trash can is left out, they're not gonna be charged $500 for forgetting to bring in their trash can.
And
No.
here it says the trash can must be brought back within 24 hours, right?
I
It's
can,
in-
I
in the-
can.
Or
do
no.
24 hours, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Because not every unit gets cleaned the next day. So somebody may not be aware that the trash can was left out.
Right, and so that's, I thought we had, am I wrong in that we said leaving the trash can out was not gonna be something you would get a $500 fine for?
No, that was right. There was a certain
distinction.
amount of, there was a level of, for lack of a better word, level of violations that are like, oh, if you correct this within the next 24 hours or 40, you're done. You're not
Right.
gonna get fined.
Like-
Because you're correcting it. You know, that's the whole thing, is we've got a number you can call, given an opportunity to correct something of, you know,
Right.
trash cans, picking up trash,
well, that could be like for noise too, right? I have an hour to get over there and correct the
well, yeah,
noise.
if you got, hey, you
So I think what Diane and staff needs to write something is like, where do you depict if it's a trash can violation, which is no money or 2 monies or 3 monies or whatever,
then-
not 5,000, not
Then can we
500.
just not categorize them? They're all just a violation?
well.
No, I agree with the categories because it helps somebody go understand like, oh, this would be like this procedural because I didn't follow this certain thing, or this is because my tenant or the guests created these disturbances.
I think if I wanted to advise, I think the word that Frank used, a nuisance violation.
Correct.
Okay.
Like a trash can versus
Rather than
something,
disturbance violation, nuisance violation.
rather than disturbance, safety,
Yeah.
and what was the other one? Disturbance and safety.
Or, yes.
What would
Are
you say?
punitive, correct, yeah. So it is defined like you're saying, Max.
And then
Nuisance.
the penalties up here, we would insert language that relates to disturbance and safety.
To disturb, yes. And nuisance, I mean, how many nuisance could I get? Like, I have 12 trash can things for the whole year and I'm fine? I just, forget
Well,
my
if you
trash
correct
can.
them each time, you're
Right.
okay.
Right. So
Yeah,
You correct it within 24 hours, you're okay.
where we have issues now, and it's not prevalent, but there's times when someone does rent a VHR, it does not get cleaned, okay? And so the trash might be there a week. usually not a problem, but we have wind up here.
Yes.
And then blow the trash cans out, and then we get trash. So we have issued citations in those instances. We go first with the warning, just letting you know, we had this problem. But if there's a second time, we do issue a citation and issue a fine. Is that,
Yes?
okay?
Yeah, I have, but like I brought up before, I have an issue with the disturbance violations. It has to say that if they are addressed
Right.
within the specified time period, it's not a violation.
Right, but if the company monitoring the stuff, if they come out an hour and a half after the first call, or if code enforcement does their due diligence checks, then it's a verified violation, then then they get the fine.
Yeah, if they don't, they have to have someone that can, I believe the code says, physically respond
1 hour.
within 1 hour.
Right.
And if they do that, then it shouldn't be a violation.
No, it's not.
Now, and even if there's multiple calls, they have that time frame.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
If they don't address it, that's a violation.
Right.
We all agree.
But people were wanting fines, the issue of the city had been addressed. They made that very clear, and I want to make it very clear when those can be imposed.
So who is the one that's going to be holding them accountable if they're an hour and 30 minutes late?
That's depending on the code enforcement and have that company between January and April that we're,
Yeah, code enforcement works Monday through Friday, right?
right, that's why we have the weekend.
Right.
So we do have people in play that are,
Till April.
Yeah, but are we gonna maintain that after?
That will be up to city council. I think
There's
it's true, but that's up to city council.
Now, there's ways that can be monitored. One of the ways it was done a lot of times in the low desert was they had a company that had a 24-hour phone number. And they didn't have to put the agent's name or the agent's number on the signs. They had the name, the telephone number of the company, who would then contact the agent. And then an hour later, they would follow up with the person who made the complaint to see if it had been addressed. That's the way that worked. It worked well. We didn't go with it. It was inexpensive at the time. I don't know what it is now, but that is one way,
Sounds good to me.
you know. But yes, we need to hold people's feet to the fire if they don't comply.
Okay. I think I got direction on that. This is the revocation. I think I understood what you're saying. It's what we talked about before, even though we formally made a decision, was that community development director would have the ability to suspend.
Suspend.
Right.
Okay, not revoke, suspend for a period of 4 years, but the owner could appeal that decision.
To us.
Okay, I think we're clear on that. And then other issues,
Permit versus license.
periodic safety inspection every 3 years.
Yes.
Yes.
yes, that allows to stay in compliance with ever-changing laws that come through.
Well, and like, I know there would be people who would add extra bedrooms.
Are we removing the term residential character of the neighborhood?
That's,
I would ask for counsel on that and just, if there's a way that we could just rephrase that sentence or
I
just
don't know how
take
you
it out
could
completely.
I don't know how we're gonna rephrase it because that's
I
so
don't know how you
subjective.
could either. I don't know how you,
I think any way you rephrase it's gonna be subjective.
correct.
Exactly.
So it's objective, you cannot have anything to critique or put it in a category to hold it to anything to say that this is a violation of this for this. I think we struggled with that many
Well,
times.
it's like if there's a real property, or even somebody who owns a home, parks a 40-foot motorhome in my view shed, that's changed the nature or the character of the neighborhood.
And there's
Right.
nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
So do we
There's
just
nothing you
take
can do
that
about
out?
I have that situation right now.
All in favor want to take it out?
I say take it out.
Yep.
Nathan?
It's fine.
Max, take out?
But you can't define it, so, yeah, take it out.
The concept I like, but you can't even define it.
I mean, if the lawyer can help us go, oh, here's how you clearly define
The
residential
lawyer
character.
will put it right back on you.
Yeah.
That sounds like Patrick.
All right, okay.
Permit
I know
versus
Commissioner Mendoza doesn't like this, but change the wording to license versus permit.
And that's only because of software?
No, it's.
Okay. It's
more
again,
professional.
The definition, the license is issued. and
Once a
then
year,
renewed. Permit issued one time.
right. Like you
The
permit
work is
my
done.
water
it
heater, work's done,
Yeah.
the end.
I-
We're
I-
not
I-
getting a
I-
license
I-
every
I-
year.
I think this is the same as issuing a business license.
Right.
I issue a business license, I don't have to show an expertise in business. In fact, you can fail as many times as you want.
Right, or.
I agree with you, yes, if I was running a
I'm okay with changing license to
professional
Yeah,
permit.
me too.
there's a professional
So
license.
is Jason and Max?
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Just to
4-1.
throw this
4-1.
out, I ran an automotive repair shop for 20 years.
I know.
Every year I had to renew my automotive registered repair dealer, the registration.
Right.
I was licensed in a completely separate thing as a smog inspection and repair station.
Guys,
And that required a whole bunch of stuff,
and those are professional licenses, I got it.
right?
Right.
Okay, this is
Got it.
different. This,
Okay. If
Let's
y'all
not
would be
pull-
happy with permit, that's
let's not
fine.
pull
Maybe
walls
I'm
over
splitting
fly
hairs,
faces.
I don't know.
Travis,
No hybrid
could
license.
we add something in there that this gets reviewed on a 3 to 5 year basis to keep up with market trends? So we don't have to have the public up in arms for a year and a half to get us to the point to where we're at now?
What gets reviewed?
The development code for vacation home
ordinance.
rentals. The ordinance gets reviewed every 3 years.
I think it would be something you would put in a resolution. I don't necessarily think you'd put it in the
That
code.
was put in when it was first approved, that it would be revisited every 2 years. Well, I'm sorry, it would be revisited 2 years after it first started, and then after that, every 5 years.
can I ask a question on this limit that we've set, that 12%?
The 10?
Will that be, so that's gonna be constantly moving?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Well,
Yes.
it's not,
So-
it's not like we said 700 firm,
Right.
because
No, it's
it's,
percentage.
it's based off if we have new development, that number, if they're detached, single family.
But if houses get bulldozed down, then it's
So
going to
all
go down.
those houses on National Park Drive are all individual, right?
Correct, they are attached
That's a good
single-family
number.
homes.
Okay.
That's
As
correct.
long as they keep putting the denominator up, I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay,
And
we,
I have to say, they did a great job working with the city on their color palette, and they look very nice.
They do.
I'm very happy with Steve, you know.
okay, we
you feel
have
good
gone
about your
through. I think
studies?
we've got direction.
Okay, so now we
So
get,
the next step is we'll take this, we'll mark up the ordinance and track changes, circulate it here by our, goes to city attorney. He look at it, tells us what's really legal, what's not, but I don't see anything in here that's a red flag for the city attorney. And then once that's done, we can schedule a public hearing. Because it is ordinance change, we do need 10 days. So I can't give you a time just yet. We'll bring it back because I know you all will be at the planning commissioners for our next week, but we'll try to move it as quickly as possible.
Are we having a meeting on the 14th? No, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be here.
yeah, we leave the 15th, but
15, yeah.
we're going to do community development director updates.
Okay. Given the hour, I'll keep it really, really short. And just say, remind everyone, March 12th is the opening for Project Phoenix.
Yay!
So it's really an all-day affair, starting with the farmer's market at 8 in the morning, and the dedication grand opening at 10, and then there's an afternoon concert in the evening. So it's
Yeah, it's like 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah.
You could be there all day.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have started working on the affordable housing project with the developer there. So I just wanted to show you that it's not something that's being ignored. This is actually some of the initial layouts that we've looked at here right behind City Hall. And again, the reason for this location was proximity to services, including county services, the library services, City Hall. We have the Sheriff's Department there, proximity to Veterans Park, which is, right next door. And one of the things we're trying to make sure is that when it is constructed, that we do have that access from the housing project to Veterans Park to the east, but also to the west, because to the west are the schools, and we do have a safe route to schools project planned there for El Paseo. So we're looking at all of these things. So initial groundwork has started. Like I said, it takes a while. These are not simple things. It's usually a combination of the city contribution, with land and improvements. There's usually a tax-exempt bond component, whatever loans and grants that we can get from the state, and then the vouchers as well. So that can be just regular vouchers, it can be veterans housing vouchers, the combination of those. So these aren't easy projects to do, but the city is committed to it, and we've started working on it.
Nice.
And then that's it, but I just kind of want to close with one personal message, if I could. And first of all, I commend all of you, and I commend all the members of the public for going through this. While we were talking, I just thought, well, I've just witnessed an exercise in democracy, right? Where citizens from all sides of an issue can come together and voice their opinion. And not necessarily agree, but hopefully arrive at a consensus. Not pleasing everybody. Not everybody gets everything they want, but somebody gets something. And that usually results in a compromise. And Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. Okay? And I totally believe that. I totally believe that about democracy. And, the reason I'm thinking about it tonight is, we've got thousands of Ukrainians over there fighting for their lives and fighting for the right to do exactly what we're doing here tonight, okay? And it's just heartening to see what they're going through. And so when we use the words freedom and democracy and kind of throw them around, they really mean things. And this is an example of democracy, of people coming together and try to agree on a set of laws to govern themselves. And that's what
remain civil while doing it.
And remain civil while doing it. So not shooting missiles at each other or anything like that. But I just wanted to close with that. Thank you all. Thank the members of the ad hoc committee for all of their hard work. Thank the members of the public for their comments and contribution. And we'll move forward with this. So.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate your comments. I thought you were going to say something else, thought you were about to retire or something. I was like, wait a minute. I don't think I want to let you have a personal comment right now. You made me nervous. Okay. With that being said, we're adjourned.
Thank you.